Продовжуємо робочий день. І зараз будемо говорити.
In our work now we'll be talking about the results of focus group research on decentralization of Ukraine. Our speakers are Olha, Dancheva, psychologist, chair of independent experts community, Oksana, Garnets, head of the Swiss-Ukrainian project, Decentralization support in Ukraine, DESPRO. Good afternoon, I am Oksana Garnets. I am head of the Swiss-Ukrainian project Decentralization Support in Ukraine, which is supporting decentralization, has been doing it since 2007. Our project is very big. It works not just in Kyiv, it works in 5 regions of Ukraine. One of the tasks of the project is promoting the idea of reform of local self-governance, administrative territorial system, promoting the idea and implementation of decentralization of Ukraine. Today, we are at the stage when everyone has heard the word decentralization, and people understand what it means for the country and partially for an average person. But nevertheless, we as experts of the project, we saw that one of the gaps in promoting the reform is providing to people everywhere, all over the country, of the exact and bright information on how reform will be going on, how will it affect the life of every person, and what will change in the life of every person. This has become one of the trends in our country because the government, the Verkhovna Rada, the presidential administration have seen that we lack information on reforms. And that is something that breaks the reform. And today we would like to present our small survey that we have done with the assistance of the NGO, an expert-type organization, the Independent Experts Association or community, and we were trying to analyze to see how the citizens understand the reform, because the attitude of people to what will be changing and the vision of how the life of a person will develop under such circumstances that change affect how people perceive the reform, whether they are such that support the reform or whether they are against the reform. We understand that reform is needed, it is reversible. People need to understand and see their place in the reformed situation and in the whole life of our country. So I would like to give the floor to Olga, who is the head of this, or the leader of this survey, and she will tell us more about the results. First of all, I would like to greet everyone here. I'm happy that there are people who are interested in different opinions existing in the society. It seems that these ideas, that's very simple. You can ask, you can get an answer, and then you can draw conclusions. But in most people from most people we hear only what we want to hear, and that is why we see these phrases as it is known, people say, and so on. That's very subjective, and the method of our focus groups proves that people think differently, they see differently, and they know differently. We have done this research in 2 stages. The first was November 2014, and the second April-May 2015. More than 100 people participated in that. These were group discussions that lasted, every discussion lasted for an hour and a half, 2 hours. All the regions which we have participated in that, even IDPs who live in Cherkasy or in Kiev region. What have we seen in dynamics? We saw that if the first ideas referred to what is decentralization, then in 2015 no one was discussing what, but people were discussing how this is done. Here you see that is the expression of one of the participants, that there are 4 stages: the stage of negation, of doubt, of research, and joining. And we found out that initially there were regions that were negatively, their attitude to decentralization was negative. In Odessa they were saying that is negative, that will mean chaos and so on. But so in Odessa that was the stage of negation. Ivano-Frankivsk were saying that first the lustration is to be conducted, and they were researching it somehow. All regions were different, but in 2015 no one had doubts that decentralization is to be implemented, and they were just researching, and they were saying that they need to know about some steps. And people, there were communities already in these discussions. The main idea that was discussed in 2014 and 2015, and the knowledge of the subject of discussion, there was no understanding of what reforms are about in 2014. That is why they were saying that the pensions will be increased, or that the MPs will be deprived of their immunity. They were mixing up the notions. Especially in the north, they were saying that separatism, and that will lead to war. In 2015, they were mentioning other things. First of all, that they were talking about powers and financing of some regions, understanding that decentralization is one link of a big chain of reforms, and people feel that this will touch upon everyone. They were talking about IDPs. The IDPs were saying that we understand that we need to survive, but we will be dealing with decentralization. There were 2 groups of opinions in 2014. In 2014, there were people who were supporters and who were opponents of the idea. The supporters were those who understood more what decentralization is, and opponents saw some house in that. they were negatively perceiving the reforms. In 2015, there were two groups of people who understood what decentralization is about. This is just the conditional name. Democrats, they understood what is the public significance of the reform, that it is the step to building up the democratic society. The Democrats are those who were supporting Maidan. The entrepreneurs, these are people who saw that decentralization is a very efficient instrument for entrepreneurial activity. Who are Democrats? Democrats are young, active people, students, representatives of authorities that came to authorities after Maidan, partially journalists and bloggers. We were emphasizing the person mentality, skills, habits, opportunities, the understanding of opportunity. The Democrats have more global vision of the opportunities, that is globally development of education, development of business, national policy, development of the country, sound competition. They look wider at the situation. This is like a different philosophy of the life of people. Some quotations, I did not write who, but decentralization is development, it's Lviv, innovation and image of Ukraine, Cherkasy, reform is cooperation, understanding between the state and the community, Chernihiv. No, I like that. And this was the idea expressed by Lugansk. If there's no contact, there's no understanding. If there's no understanding, there's no interaction. If there's no interaction, there's no efficiency. Young politicians in Sumy region, they were saying that there are those young people who do not want to just talk. They want to have modern managers, and they see some changes. What did the entrepreneurials see? These are experienced representatives of local authorities who have been working along the representatives of small business, elderly people who have the experience of unsuccessful reforms. And their attitude to Maidan was very cautious. Their accents they emphasize that there should be decentralization, and they talk about use of resources and opportunities locally, transfer of powers, making services closer to people, vision of opportunities that is in financing, culture and quality of medicine, security, attraction of investments. The criticism of reform is like the criticism of the specific steps of the Verkhovna Rada and the government. Personal perspectives, they feel difficulties ahead, and they do everything to avoid any possible difficulties.
Here you can see quotations from the entrepreneurs' answers. First, they see decentralization as an opportunity for the community to resolve the problems with its power, with its resources, and with its own people. The second statement was made that the current budgetary code very much regulates the activities of local communities. That is, if local people want to have the musical schools and can afford it, then let them finance it without limitation. The next aspect was that the vision of a community. Both groups see the community as the driver of decentralization, and also people believe that community is a group of people who live jointly in some specific territory. They have joint property, joint objectives, joint purposes, and I think that joint activities. I would like to draw attention of the journalists to this statement. As for the process of decentralization, the process had been criticized in 2014 and is being criticized now, but they think that now we should act more actively. Now about the informational strategy of decentralization reform. People require more information, more straightforward information. They believe they're able to analyze this information independently. Each head of local government has his or her own vision of decentralization, but nevertheless, heads of local governments understand that they are first responsible figures because they are elected by their communities, and they very responsibly takes each step in decentralization. And wrap up my presentation, I would like to show you this picture. On one hand, it seems that mass media should be very supportive in providing information, clear information to people, but unfortunately, sometimes it happens that they only confuse people. I am Olga, and I am a social psychologist by background, and I'm now ready to answer your questions. I'm from Ukraine Crisis Media Center. So my first question is whether you have the same presentation or results of your survey in English, because many foreign journalists are interested in the topic. It might be very helpful for them to have it in English. It's not my responsibility to translate it, but I believe that our project can do this. What will be the further use of your survey results? I believe that DESPRO project will make full use of it. My responsibility was to carry out this survey. So maybe I will answer this question. Thank you for the question. At the very beginning, I mentioned that the media strategy of the reform has already become the trend in discussions in our country. Yesterday, this topic was discussed at the top level on the government management, and in order to be able to develop good media or information strategy for the reforms, we carried out this survey. This survey is very fresh. English version is not ready, but we are now preparing to presentation to the Ministry of the Regions. to the Cabinet of Ministers, to Verkhovna Rada, that is, to all those decision makers who have to decide how information on reforms could reach the stakeholders. And one more question. Very short question. Whether you tried to see whether people in eastern and southern regions distinguish between decentralization and federalization. Of course, this issue was raised during group discussions, and during group discussions people raised a lot of ideas, and their objective was to reach some opinion. Some of the group participants mentioned that our discussion started to think about ideas. Of course, the issues of federalization and separatism were raised and compared against each other. Any further questions? No further questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. Let us hope that it will reach those government officials who are responsible for information on decentralization. Our next briefing will be at noon. Thank you.